So to get started today, yeah, I left up the nice NCLUG page, as you can see, and we're hosting an event here. I'm going to go ahead and minimize that, and I want to get started with our program as a whole. And so Bentley, I want to make sure you guys walk away with collateral in the sense that you've got pointers and links, and you can follow along. You know, in some cases you'll kind of sort of watch, but I want to get started just with Bentley.com. So if I come back out here, I just want to advertise that it all starts with Bentley.com. And I know a lot of users are familiar with the page, probably don't keep up, you know, because we're users, we consume the solutions. And, you know, this is good to kind of post for people that are prospects, people that are looking to get engaged with Bentley solutions. But if you are a user, I encourage you to come out here, especially if you're an influencer, somebody that has kind of, you know, responsibilities over managing the progress of the technology for your organization. And so out here, we've got a few campaigns that kicks this off. First and foremost, we've got what we call Bentley Has Your Back. And I just want you to come out. All I did was go to Bentley.com and point out that there's a campaign here where we've got a couple different offerings. I'm going to talk about two of them, but because certainly some of us, for the purpose of this, may not be, you know, buildings users, things like that. But there is a campaign if you are there. I'm going to be focused on the COVID-19 challenge, as well as our work from home opportunity here. And so just starting with COVID, Bentley's created a page around COVID, what we're trying to do to assist you. And so this page is a great resource. We've got a bunch of tiles down here at the bottom that helps you understand different challenges. And I just encourage everybody to have a quick preview of it if you get a chance, because you might think you've got everything nailed down, but there's always something that we're advancing in here that, you know, as we're learning from feedback we gain from you, our guys are quickly trying to react and respond accordingly here. So this is, you know, obviously on the web, so it's assume it updates, you know, every second of the day. So in this instance, we've got some good tiles, and like I said, we've got the FAQ for working from home. We've got, you know, some videos you can watch about some of the webinars and things we have. And if you're a licensed administrator, hopefully you've been able to overcome some of those challenges with the VPN, you know, things of that nature. But just in case, we've got, you know, a portal there for you on that. But one of the areas I'd like to really kind of point users to here is to our communities and this link right here, because this is going to take you out and answer a lot of questions that you may not be aware of. And so out here, we extend into the discussion about this. I'm not going to read this today. I just want to point you to the link and share with you that we've kind of gone through these questions and provided resources to follow up with them. So if you're a user that's using LumenRT as an example, which is usually to extend your MicroStation or OpenRoads solution into something that's more of a visualized offering, we've got details on that. And so many different products. If you've got that user that's having an issue, you know, with some of the OpenFlow solutions, there's resources here. I encourage you to take a look at them because, you know, there's, you know, our solutions vary, and you might not be familiar with all of the nuances of them. And so as we're understanding how the work from home is transforming the way we do business, we're responding with these articles here. So I want to point you to that. So that's one of the first places I think is very important to be able to be aware of. I'm going to go back now to our Bentley page. I'm just going to come up here and talk about the work from home now. So there's a campaign, and if you're, you know, I usually suggest this for a small to mid-sized business, you know, users that are having difficulties with file exchange. We have a solution known as ProjectWise 365, and this is a campaign that they've waived the fees till September 30th. You know, in this instance, you may have already heard about this, but if you're on the fence of ProjectWise 365, what it is, that type of thing, I would encourage you to jump on this, have a look at it, get a preview of it, and make your decision there before the end of September and see, is this something that we can really get into? I'm going to show some technology today that is not ProjectWise 365, but it is kind of the first step to getting to it should you decide you want to kind of elevate into that solution. So much of what I'm going to show today is going to be about what you already have, your entitlements, otherwise known as free in many cases. You know, when I do point something out, because I'm the type of individual that wants to be open and honest and say this is possibly going to cost you something, you need to talk to an account manager, I will let you know that. You know, the purpose of this isn't to be very, you know, I want to just be open and honest is my point here. And so I want to be very clear about where something's going to possibly cost you a conversation with an account manager, which you may already have the entitlement, you may not know, but I want to point out this might extend into that. So I just want to be clear about that. But on this page, we can see that we've got the, you know, the Bentley has your back, and it's good up until September 30th. The fees are waived. Usually, to me, it's kind of a try before I buy type of a thing, and it gives me an opportunity to really kind of flesh it out and see if it'll work for my organization. And then, like I said, those communities links. So these are two very good resources. Not to take away from any of the others, but we are on a tight time crunch, so I'm going to continue on here. So that's just out on Bentley.com. And so now the work from home experience, where does it start? You know, what do I need to be aware of? And what you keep talking about something that's, you know, kind of an entitlement that I already have. Well, it all starts with Connection Client. And I think it's an overlooked resource that for many years, users just installed it. They didn't really know what it did. So I'm going to kind of focus on that today. And so Connection Client, for many of you have seen, it gets loaded down here in Windows and it runs as a service. And this is a new secure way of managing licensing moving forward. So Select Series 10 and beyond are going to use a new higher level of security licensing mechanism, but it comes with other offerings, and I want to point those out to you. So I'm going to come over here and simply go to my Connection Client and right click. And when we do, we can see that we get a couple of different opportunities. We can exit, we can sign out, we can open it, we can access Connect Center. What I'm going to start with is just opening it. And we've all seen this before, and many users see it, and then they always have to minimize it. So I want to kind of start my focus there first. And I want to point that out by going over here to the upper right, we can see preferences. And whenever I get a new solution, I always want to uncover what are the options available. So I encourage you to do the same if you already hadn't. And if we take a look under the preferences, we'll see that there's a series of different sections dedicated to it. The general one is highly overlooked in many cases. And I want to make sure that, you know, you are using this new secure licensing mechanism, but I want to make sure you're also using it wisely. And in this case, you can automatically sign in and minimize this connection, something that's grossly overlooked by many users. And they're always saying, why does it always pop up? Certainly always investigate, you know, why didn't we do it by default? Why don't we deliver it that way? Well, if it never popped up, you'd never know to sign in the first time. So you got to think about that workflow. But once you go ahead and do that and you sign in and you check your preferences, you can see you can have it so it'll automatically sign in and minimize. Now, the section on notifications, really useful. This is how we communicate without sending email back and forth to each other. So it's a really good way, you know, as email starts to really overtake our lives these days with every little, did you do this, did you do that? Sometimes simple notification while you're working on a project makes sense, and we offer that in here. Of course, many of us users out there don't have IT install privileges, but I do encourage you, if you have the opportunity, at least be informed when there's updates. And so, you know, from this standpoint, as Bentley's advancing their products, and for those that are unaware, Open Roads Designer is on its 8th update, 9th is coming around the corner, and MicroStation Connect is on its 14th update, with the 15th one coming around the corner. You can see that in the Connect edition, we are quickly moving to improve our solutions. Previous to that, if you were to count how many generations of software we had, I don't think since 2000 up until 2015, we had 14 releases of MicroStation through different generations or updates. So that's just something to consider. So we're advancing very fast, and we want to make sure that you're able to ride the wave with us. So with that being said, I think it's always useful to be informed of the updates. You might not be able to install them, and you might be that type of person that's an influencer that can communicate, coordinate, and work with IT to even bring up that discussion. Because like I said, having been a former IT manager, I can tell you, I'm also worried about Office updates and other things. So I might not know one brand from another, and whether it's important to update until I hear from you. So see this as an opportunity, not as a disadvantage, which I think some users see that, oh, I can't install it, so I don't want to be told. I encourage you to consider that. Now, our focus today about work from home is all going to be based on this section right here, the share. And we're going to talk about what that is, what its limitations are, and where things then blend and bridge over into ProjectWise 365, ProjectWise, etc. And I just want to encourage this. This is an overlooked section here, is the share. And I want to point out that I've enabled my share sync. Now, for questions on what this is, we can go and do the learn more here. And if I just click on this to open it up, I'm not going to tell you every little nuance today about it. I'm just going to do this live and go through the, go through this process, this workflow. But as you can see here, we've documented kind of the behaviors, how it works, and that type of thing, what some of the limitations are. So keep in mind, there are some syncing limitations and some different limitations. So it's a very good resource to come out here nonetheless, because I don't want you to scope out or plan out an idea around a project and realize that, well, maybe your project, requires more than that storage. So just be aware of those types of things. But there is description out there. I've enabled mine today, and I'm just going to simply share with you what that results in. So if I open up Windows Explorer here, I just want to showcase that I have right here the ProjectWise share on my Windows, just by checking that box. I've enabled that ability. Now you'll see that I've got some folders in here for today, and we'll talk more about that when we get out there. But I just want to point out that without that enabled, I won't get this ProjectWise share option. So I'm going to move on, and I want to talk lastly about the account. And all I do is I encourage everybody every once in a while to check this and make sure that your profile is up to date. And it might seem, unneeded or unnecessary, but how many of us have filed a support ticket and then, we find out later that they were calling the wrong phone number. They were trying to reach you, and that was the old company you worked at. Or in my case, the confusion over my last name, and I was actually getting a lot of things in Chinese, I suspect, and I had to go fix my profile. So I encourage you to come out here, select manage, and just check the properties of your profile. You put as much detail as you are comfortable in putting. I don't want you to give away any more information than you're comfortable with, but at least make sure what you do have in there is accurate, because we want to make sure that when you are reaching out for assistance, that we can get back to you properly, in an efficient amount of time here. So, you can see I went in there and updated my profile. And this is to each user. So this is something that you have, control over yourselves. So that's really important. But now let's talk about the share again, and how do I really get this, in use? How do I use this, especially in a work from home? I might be a small firm. I'm a surveyor. I've got another person on the other end of my, of this project I'm working on in another office. Or at his house, and we have to exchange files. Email isn't working because I have a data cap on it, that type of thing. Or maybe the frequency is overwhelming. Well, this is where we come back into Connection Client, and I just want to point out the Connect Center option here at the top. It looks like a little waffle, and we're going to go ahead and enable that. Now, when I do this, it's going to take me out to my Connect Center, as it's called. Now, I used to advertise this to people and say it's kind of like your own personal Facebook for engineering, if you will. It's kind of a one-stop shop collection of all the different web properties and options and entitlements that Bentley offers for you as a user. And, the tiles can vary based on the services your organization offers. So you may have more, you may have less, but it's always just right. So in this instance, we can see the Connect Center. And I just want to advertise the ability to kind of customize and configure this. So I've turned off a bunch of different things, but when you first get in, we introduce what you need to know about getting started out here. Certainly, I encourage you, it's small videos, to kind of just take a moment, watch the video, understand kind of what the purpose of this is. But that's available to you. I've gone and customized some and removed a few things and just distilled this down for my needs. So I have a very simple page of kind of recommended events. I've got what are called ProjectWise projects, which we'll talk about in a moment. And then I've got a series of tiles around the bottom here that are dedicated for purpose. So maybe I have download access. I can download the latest solution. It's a very easy place to get to, not saving a bookmark because our fulfillment servers change. We might change the address, things like that. We want to make sure that you guys always have the latest, most current place to go to there. But maybe I downloaded the software and now I want to learn a little bit more about it through the documentation. You can see there's a tile that will take us right out to the live document center. And for many users, if you're unaware of this, I can tell you from my own personal experience that sometimes the documentation comes out before the product. So you'll even get kind of a heads up of what's coming. So I encourage you to really leverage this. You know, maybe the documentation doesn't answer all your questions and you've got something for others. Well, that's where we trend into communities. And as you saw, communities is not only a resource for FAQs and things like that, but engagement with other users. There's also user communities out there. So you can definitely get engaged and grow the network. You know, you're only as good as those around you, and this is a good network to use here. And after that, maybe you still have something and it's a little bit more personal, private for your organization. It's a project you're working on or a challenge. You can then file a ticket here right off of this page. Now, that being said, I also want to follow up and cover myself and say if your organization has a workflow for ticketing, I encourage you to use that first. But if they're unaware of a resource, you can also share this with them and point out that that's available to them. I really like using tickets myself, even though my TSG guys probably don't like to hear that necessarily, because then I can create kind of an aggregate knowledge base of every challenge I had and resource that later on. So, you know, you forgot, oh, I remember that conversation, but I forget exactly what I did. I can just go dig back up in my old tickets. So this is kind of a bespoke knowledge base for myself. And then in addition to this, we've got Learn Server. And for those that are unaware, I think NCLUG is very dialed into the resources that Bentley has. The Learn Server is available and out there, and we've got a lot of great training material out there for you guys to access around various products, both which you may have as an entitlement and maybe just things that you're trying to learn about before you get your hands on it. So really good resource out there. There are some other capabilities here. I'm not really going to focus on those because I want you familiar with this experience before we start dipping into the real deep, complicated areas and opportunities. It's about getting your toe dipped in the pool here. So this is available to each user, is the Connect Center. And like I said, some of the tiles may vary, but the ones that I just mentioned, you know, besides the software downloads, most of these you have access to as a user. So Learn, documentation, things of that nature. Let's talk about the project now. So I'm working as a surveyor with that other guy and he's at home. I'm out in the field collecting surveys, collecting data, and I want to share that data with them, and it's too big for email. Well, I can take advantage of what is considered a project-wise project. Now, just because it says project-wise does not mean you need project-wise. That's kind of a general term that Bentley likes to use to showcase it as a collaborative environment for the purpose of, you know, sharing documents. And there's different tiers to that. So I'm going to focus on the ones that are your free entitlements. And then as we steer into, you know, more of the service-oriented ones that come at a cost, I'll point those out. But so here I have a project-wise project, and I'm just going to come over because I may not have anything here. So I'm going to click on this little magnifying glass and go out to some of my favorite projects. Now I do have a few, but if I've had none as a user, we can see here we have small videos advertising the purposes of each. How do I register one? And especially if I forget, you know, how did I fill that out the last time, or how does that work? We've got these videos here to help support that need. We don't expect you to every day come in here and register a project. Sometimes your projects are very long and it might be months before you get back to creating one yourself. So in this instance, we have small videos here advertising some of the main points that make this up. Obviously, you got to create a project, but then there's the, you know, the 3 tent poles or whatever that hold up the rest of it. And you can see I have a few today. So I've been subscribed to a couple of different projects, and I can save them as a favorite. Now, one advantage of this, because it's in the cloud and because this is using a browser, I could also be doing this from an iPad tablet to review some of this. I want you to keep that in mind. So I could have been logged in, pull up my favorites, and start reviewing some of the information out there. For today's example, I've got just this little test project I threw together. And so I've created a project, and this is essentially a placeholder, a storefront for my project. This is almost the predecessor to what would be eventually a digital twin. We need to be able to go to the project, not the project go to us. It's kind of a backwards concept necessarily. We traditionally have dark files all over the place, and we exchange them through email, making copies of them, and we don't know which ones are the single source of truth, or even then, we don't have a place where we can have the chronology amongst the entire team. And so that's something I want you to consider when you think about the purpose of having a connected project. It does stand above and beyond all of these siloed servers that many organizations have. I encourage you to consider these. And so with this environment, you can see that I can add team members, and then we can even go through and set up, details about the project. Now, here's the thing. There's a bigger overarching purpose here. By me declaring this as an industry type, I can later on let management kind of do more of a GIS type of a big picture approach and say, how many roads and highways did we do last year versus rail projects versus something else? So by tagging these different assets around an industry, we're assisting you in looking at the bigger picture and become more prophetic in what your organization can do. So it goes beyond just the work from home. Now, as we look at this, we can see I come down. So we've got some team members. We can also assign people outside of our organization. I don't want to forget to point that out. But in here, as we look at this, we can see there's some tiles. Now, generically speaking, this is exactly what you get out of the box. We've got a share, and those limitations, like I said, the storage limitations and all that of what's considered free are out there on communities. Usually it's about 2 gigs of data, I believe is the threshold. We may have extended that. I thought I saw 10 gig there a moment ago, but we've got, limited storage points for free. And you'll see we have a share. I'm going to talk just loosely about that and issues resolution today, and just a light touch on forms. But just if you're a business person, if you're a project manager, you can manage your transmittals, your RFIs, and all of that through this system. And the advantage of this, I want to point out, it goes beyond just CAD. It goes beyond just open roads or MicroStation. It goes into more of a business-centric workflow here that a project manager can now manage kind of what's going on the job. How many of us have had a project with a project manager that, for whatever reason, he's retired midstream of the project, or maybe he's just, had a career change and he's moved across the country and he's no longer with our organization? Well, what happens then? Well, usually it means that your email account of that previous guy's account now gets shared with another guy, so they can kind of look at the the messages that have been exchanged back and forth for a while on that project. It gets messy, is my point. Whereas here we can let this stuff all kind of collate or aggregate together. It's the aggregate of all the business information. So this great storefront around the project, we can switch out a project manager whenever we want, and they all have access to the same content. They don't have to, go above and beyond and loosen those security rules you might have of sharing another person's email account, which is not a secure method. So consider it beyond CAD when I talk about this. But I'm going to talk about the share. And when I open the share, I just want to advertise here, we've got a small structure. I've added just a couple of folders in here. This is out in the cloud. This is, storage that I have as an entitlement around my project. And we've gone ahead and I've added some folders out here. Now, I just want you to see these folders, and I'm going to jump right back over to my ProjectWise share. And I want you to see that under that plan review project, I don't have the same number of folders. Well, there's a reason for that. As a user, I chose which ones I want to synchronize. So my business interests can be, established and synchronized to my local machine. So as a collective, as a team, that roadway guy I was talking about, I'm the surveyor, I'm in the field, I just have a survey folder. It's all I care about. I want to put my data in this folder, and it's going to synchronize once I get to McDonald's using their free Wi-Fi, right? If you've surveyed, you've done that many times. And I want that data now to stream over into the cloud out to that point, and it'll do that. It'll synchronize out. out to the cloud once I'm in a data connection. I'll get that data uploaded in there without copying it. All I did was drag and drop into this particular folder and put something in there. And by doing that, that's a way to communicate my data up, and my notifications to my users will pass through Connection Client, alerting them that I've added some files maybe for them to review. I didn't need to send an email. I didn't need to try to zip something up. I literally just put it in my folder. Now, this folder structure, you could build out a whole folder structure if you'd like. For today's example, I just threw a few folders in here. But in this particular instance, I went ahead and did that. It would go up and they would get access to that. Now, if that user is also synchronizing this folder on their machine, as soon as it succeeds in the cloud at that hub, it's going to bounce down to that user and be on his machine. So there's some great things there. And for users that are familiar with ProjectWise opening and closing files, I do want to point out that when you right click on it, you can actually lock the file. So I can lock that file so no other user opens that file while I'm engaged in that particular file. And notice in this case, I'm using PDF as an example. We're going to lean into why I did, but this could have been a DGN file as well. Just want to make you aware of that. So I've gone and chosen what files to sync, and those are syncing. So I've done these user groups a couple of times. So in this case, here's my NCLUG. So I can come over and simply say, you know, I want to set that NCLUG folder up for synchronization. And so now that that's up for synchronization, I will point out under my preferences, my default is 5 minutes. If I need it sooner, I simply just come in and force its hand. And so by hitting sync now, it's going to send me communications that there's been changes to the project and synchronize those. And so if I come back over and I look and we go back into this, you can see there's my NCLUG folder. And that was just a folder. That wasn't even a document yet. Now, of course, if I'm working on something on my machine, maybe I created a new DGN file. And just for my example, I'll pick on a DGN file that I commonly cover in my trainings. I'll just grab something we have in here. And here is, let's grab this example. I will just grab some terrain. There we go, terrain. Couldn't see it. So I'm just going to copy that terrain. And let's just imagine I was working right here and that file goes here. Well, I can also then right click and sync it off of there, and it'll push it up into this folder out in the cloud. So as I'm working, creating new documents, I'm not going to copy and paste them here per se, but if I just create a new file and I create it in there, we'll see that over time it synchronizes out, and now it goes out to the hub essentially, and other users that are synchronizing this will also get this communicated down to them. So very nice mechanism to you know, essentially allow your files to kind of coordinate. Now, this is a very primitive coordination in the sense that if you're a full-fledged ProjectWise user, you would not be taking advantage of this. And this is where I'll circle back to just the general project details. And I do want to point out this is part of the 365 services, is you can actually connect your ProjectWise repository, or you can connect SharePoint. And those do come at a cost that you'd need to coordinate with your account managers to discuss. But up until that point, up into that capability, what I just showed you does not come at a cost. So I think that's important to point out when we talk about working from home. Now, one other item I want to jump on, and I'm going to do this within the share, and I'm going to pick on one of the documents that are out here, is I commonly have worked with, you know, through the years, worked with individuals of, you know, different experiences and ages and et cetera. And, you know, our more senior staff typically are reviewers. And as we get into a digital age, we need to think about how not only are we leveraging the latest technology, but also how are we getting, you know, our more senior users that are traditional paper reviewers, things like that, into this digital age as well. They're not going to move at the same momentum. They're not going to need the same level of detail or fidelity yet. But it's just about managing the confidence and onboarding them, especially to work from home, because we could save on shipping costs of sending plan sets back and forth between houses of who's printing it, who's reviewing it. Maybe I got to meet you in the car. Well, that could be a health and safety issue now, given COVID. So maybe we just go with PDF. I print a PDF plan set and I get my reviewer engaged in reviewing. Well, there's many systems and solutions out there, and most of the time I hear the same thing. It's too complicated. Now, we may not think that be the case, but you got to understand the challenges of people as you know, the computing age. You know, the kids of today are born with iPads. You know, I know some of the reviewers right now, there weren't even computers out until after college for them. So we want to know our audience and make sure we fit well with it. So with the share environment, if I were to print out, say, my PDFs out here to the cloud, we can actually go out, save the PDF in the share, sync it up there, the whole bit, and notify that user and say, hey, here's my plan set to review. And this is just an example. I threw out a PowerPoint I did a while ago. And in here, I just want to point out, we can comment on different aspects with a free PDF reviewer. All I did, I have no software installed on my machine other than the browser. I've accessed my connected project, opened the share, selected the PDF. That's something you could have emailed that reviewer. And as soon as we email that reviewer, you can see that he's looking at the PDF. He can see there's a minimal number of tools here along the side to manage kind of how to navigate through it. Maybe he wants to look at it in an outline fashion. Maybe he wants to look at the pages. You know, maybe he wants to control layers if this is a DGN that was done with PDF level controls. We can also then navigate through the directory. Maybe we have other PDF documents in that folder. So rather than going back and forth through that directory, we can actually just access them here. But let's just come down, and I just want to point out, I can come through and, you know, here's that new ribbon interface. And maybe I found that something wasn't communicated correctly on this, or maybe this is a plan set. My review tools are up here on the right now. And so in here, we can come through, we can measure. We can do all sorts of freehand drawing. We can place text. We can also come through and draw little shapes. Like maybe I need to bubble this out and just need to put my comments around this idea and say, you know, this area needs something done to it. So I might flag that. And now I can fill out an issue around it. This goes above and beyond just a regular Adobe markup. Because one thing I want to advertise here, and this is about working from home, this is about extending that just interchange of files and also extending it into the review process and the interchange of that data. I can come in here and put in a subject and say, you know, update ribbon, and I can specify a due date and say I need that by next Friday. And you know what? I'm going to assign it to one of my team members. So in this case, I can pick a particular team member. And then I can declare a work state and say that this is, you know, unresolved. And I can say this is the old image. And I can go through and make the appropriate documentation to why that has an issue. How many of us have paper plans? There's just markups on it. It doesn't really explain what the reasoning was around it. This allows us that additional fidelity here to describe it. Now, when I save this, it's going to submit to that individual, and on their connections client, they're going to get a notification telling them that they need to do something. No email was needed to be sent for that, to describe that. Now, while we went through and did this, you know, there are some other capabilities. We can sign it. We can place free text. We can even do additional call outs. I can also just create a general issue. Notice I did something and then flagged the issue off of it. But let's say that multiple users are reviewing this same document. And that's something that I wanted to point out. All this while, I am actually connected and reviewing, but we can have many users marking up this same set at the same time. How do I know what comments I put in versus someone else? Well, we can have a look at that. And we can see every comment that's been created in here, what the issue tracking that's been assigned to it. And so there's a lot of complexity behind the simplicity of this interface. And this allows you guys to let that guy who's a traditional reviewer not just write it down on a piece of paper and then mail it back to you for, you know, to make those changes. He can digitally communicate this back. And so I want to advertise the PDF review here and inside of the share. So a huge advantage here, grossly overlooked, and this is not at any particular cost. So if you're subscribe to Bluebeam or Adobe Acrobat licenses and you're challenged at trying to find ways during the pandemic to reduce your costs, this might be something worth considering because this comes at no additional cost. With that being said, I'm going to jump back to the share for a moment, and I'm going to jump back to the project for a moment. And you saw I just filed an issue. So the project manager wants to keep track over what the reviewer's doing and what the designers are designing. And so in here, we can actually look and see that I filed an issue to update the ribbon. And he may say, you know what, I don't want this, or where is that coming from? He can click on that link, he can read it, he can come through and reject it if he wants and close it out and save it. And it's gonna update and it'll say who, it'll basically come through and say it was closed, who modified it. And it doesn't necessarily mean it's gone. We can change our mind later and turn it back on if new discussions occurred that allowed us to understand the reason why that needed to be there. But it can be followed through. It's not just a stack of paper plans in a box on the corner of somebody's desk in an office or at their home. So it's digital, it's connected, it's tied into our project. So we can truly work from home. And if anybody wants to save out the entire list, we can do just that as well out to a CSV file or some other file types like PDF. So from a business standpoint, your project manager can really kind of see what's going on, see the progression, how many are open, how many need to be done. They can decide whether or not that one wants to be held to a different date. So a lot of nice capabilities in here. So that is kind of the share and the concept of being able to use Connection Client, synchronize the data, go out to this storefront that is the connected project, see the correlation between the share to the desktop user back up to this hub, if you will, this storefront, as well as the reviewing process and how issues can be tracked now, documented, approved, denied. And the last thing I want to share with you on here before I jump out of this page is forms. Now, forms, these are great capability that are also here, and we deliver a couple examples. I'm not going to necessarily pick them all apart, but what I want to share with you is that we have some forms in here that you can come through, and I know I got a meeting one in here. Yeah, I believe it's meeting. But if I go and create a new form, say meeting minutes, and create this, we could actually start documenting even our meeting minutes and tying those directly into the project. So there's no loss of information. All the data is being held together in this one space. And of course, I gave an example the other day to a group, and I talked about a safety checklist. I'm going out in the field. I want to make sure I got the boots, my helmet, my vest, all of that, just as a day-to-day preventative checklist to make sure that we're being safe. With COVID now, do we have our masks? Do we have all these other things? I want to make sure that my people are safe. I can build a checklist, and when they're out in the field, they pull up their tablet, they can go through and fill out their form for the day, and I can be reassured on the project that they are actively being safe during this pandemic, and I can see evidence of it. It's just, the last thing you want is to get a call from a district or somebody saying the guy's not out in the field, he's not wearing a vest, and I noticed he didn't have a mask. And sadly, that's a reality sometimes that occurs. So I would like to see this history of when they're going out, that they are in fact being safe, and I can build my own reports around this. So you can build various forms. We have just a couple examples, but I wanted to make you aware of that because what I'm doing out here is housed in the cloud and can be accessed on those devices. When I come back over here, the last little bit I want to point out, there's a component center, and you'll see that we've got iTwins and some other automation services. All I wanted to focus on were just enough things to get your toe dipped in to give it a try. I know that this is overwhelming, especially with the work from home and all the challenges of being in tight, confined spaces. I don't want to overwhelm you and broadcast all of these things. I encourage you to get comfortable and confident with what I shared. And then I'm confident that you'll start to venture out, get curious, and try some of these other things that I think extend those offerings even further. Now, with regard to iTwins, it will lead into a services situation, and you'll need to talk to your account manager. But for the most part, everything I've showed thus far you can do today. You have access to it. The only thing that might be barring you is if, by some chance, your fulfillment contact, IT, maybe hadn't given you permissions on something. But at the same time, this might open the opportunities to open up that discussion, because IT is very challenged right now, more than ever, to support a whole bunch of people remotely, and that can be quite taxing. So this might open opportunities for them to kind of give them a little bit of relief. So something to consider having some dialogue on. Now, with that being said, I want to close the loop on this, and I want to talk. I showed a connected project. I showed a DGN file. How does this all fit together to my desktop application? Well, to finish this thought, I want to come right back over, and I'm going to open up MicroStation now. And underneath MicroStation, I want you to see that here's my MicroStation desktop. I'm going to go ahead and run it. This is update 14. If you don't have that by now and you're a MicroStation user, I encourage you to get it. There's some really good advancements in the latest release, specifically for custom GCS that I tend to lean on a lot. But I can come through here and I can take advantage of my different workspace environments. And so from in there, then I can also go ahead, and here's my one project I created called Work From Home. But maybe I need to create a new project. Maybe I don't have access to a browser at the moment. I'm just heads down in the middle of this. Well, I can come through and configure, and I'll just make this one NCLUG for the moment. And I'm going to go and set up a new project. Now, where I store that project, I have to make decisions where it makes sense, but I could do that. But I want you to see down here, it's always overlooked, that we can browse to establish a new project. And so in this case, I might want to register a project, and it's going to jump right out to that browser and bring me right to that page where I can start the process of building my connected project. So I want to make you aware of that. So in this case, I've already made the work from home. I've already filled out the data to make that project. And you'll note that if you hadn't noticed, what I was using today when I advertised to everybody was called this text.plan review. I was just showing PDF to them. There's nothing secret there. But I've already created one now. I called it work from home. But when I select on this, it's actually going to take me to the project portal access. I have actually access to this project data, and notice I've got all of those different pieces of information as it relates to that text.plan review. So you can have it named one thing and have it point to something else. Ideally, we wouldn't necessarily do that, but I want you to be aware that you can use different naming systems to kind of, regardless. And so in this instance, if I needed to jump out to that portal, I could click this and it would take me directly out to that project. And then in addition to that, when I go to browse and work on my files, I did not pad mine for today to there, but I can actually go and say, oh, well, that was this file over here under my NCLUG, that terrain existing, and begin, working on that data. So I just want to make you aware of that interconnectivity there that exists. So as an order of best practice, you might create a work set, create a connected project, put your folders out there and all your files, and now everybody, as they're connecting in through their work sets, they're actually live grabbing that local desktop data that's syncing back out to the cloud, communicating to the other users. So I just wanted to, I want to stop right there. I think I've pretty much kind of, talked for close to 50 minutes. And I want to give everybody a chance to kind of open up for questions, and also give Patty time to award those that stuck around long enough. So any questions? Anybody have any thoughts on this, concerns? And remember, you might be muted.
Yeah, and the chat window's open. I don't see any questions in the chat window yet. Don.
Hey, Patty, this is Oak. I don't think we can do chat. It's disabled.
Yeah, I see chat's disabled on my end as well. So if there are questions that are coming in, it's amongst the team members. Just read, if you could read them out, that would be helpful for anybody who's classified as team member. So anyone have any questions about this? Is anybody actively using this? I will say this, it's been around for a number of years. I can tell you from my standpoint, you know, my job now at Bentley is to go around and teach ORD, and I go everywhere, and I don't see this getting used. But then keep in mind, many of the accounts I deal with have ProjectWise. What I showed you was kind of up to the 365 point. I didn't want to steer into the 365 elements because I think, you know, as a user, you want to start there, get a good understanding. And, you know, with the campaign, you got to make that decision. And there's a lot of benefits with the ProjectWise 365 system. But I wanted to make sure that I could cover a broader audience so that everybody could walk away with the possibility of trying it today. I didn't want you held up behind, you know, trying to coordinate with an account manager, get permissions from your internal management, those types of things. This could be adopted today and explored.
Hey, Don, so we are ProjectWise users. That 2 gig limit doing the share that you show, is that a limit for us too?
That's a limit, Oak, in the share, not in the repository connection, right? So when you hook up your repo, you can hook up your repository folder for your project and say, this is actually where my data is. And so then what you're doing there is you're taking advantage of the storage limits that you have in ProjectWise.
Okay, and also when we pull the files over, does it use like the managed workspace or the non-managed workspace?
So in this instance, if we're talking on a ProjectWise integrated front, it would be using the managed workspace if the project was managed. Now, it assumes a few things from that standpoint. The user would have to have, you know, obviously ProjectWise entitlement. So if that's let's just say for this example, NCDOT is hosting, and personally, I'm starting to see this more and more often, is that you'll see agencies hosting all of the project IDs out in these storefronts, tying into the repositories, assigning the different design teams that are going to be working on it, whether it be internal, external, or both. And using this because this allows them to be the hub, the collector, the keeper of all of their assets that are that state's data. They will do that. Now, as far as the ProjectWise side of it, those entitlements to those outside users, that's a discussion that, you know, if you want and expect them to use ProjectWise, well, you know, you might support the licensing costs, or they might, you know, obviously that's, if you need that level of fidelity, it's there. And for those that are unaware, by the way, and I apologize, actually, it's a great question, Oak. So in the midst of this happening, I'll run ProjectWise in the background for a minute. Keep in mind that ProjectWise actually has a tab that takes you directly to that connected project as well. So there's true integration of these connected projects in all these different aspects. So let me just pick on one of the ones I just recently did. Well, hopefully they don't mind. So if y'all are, if Jacobs is on here, hopefully y'all don't mind. I'm not going to show project data, but I just need the tab up. But this is certainly available. Oh, I put in the wrong password. That's why. There we go. Okay. So many of you may have noticed that down here across this portion of ProjectWise, you'll see there's Connected Projects tab. And so that's actually each one of your projects, so you can have tied to it, and you know, this personal portal. And so you'll see it's loading all of that from Connection Client, all that good stuff. And so if there's a connected project, then this is where you would use it as your point of access. So for this one, I don't have it, but I just want you to see that it's directly even integrated in here. So you would see that connected project. It seems a little weird that you're in a project data source looking at another one, but it's because it goes beyond just our traditional files, right? Some of it's more performance-based. We're looking at different analytics.
Can anybody create this, a regular user, or do you have to be a project manager or an admin?
Well, that's up to the organization. There are rights and controls and capabilities that you can establish underneath your user management. So you need to look at user management. Certainly, we're here to help for large organizations if you have questions about this. That's what we're here for. It's you know, this is just there's a lot of knowledge on communities that we can also point you to that discusses this. When I clicked that link about a connected project, it took us out to communities, and I kind of quickly skimmed through it, but that entire left tree view, if you will, really gets into all those nuances. I suspect some users can't create a project, and it might be because the maturity of this didn't transfer that knowledge, that information over to those fulfillment contacts to say, hey, we should enable this and use it. I believe it's off by default. I don't think we want to just open up, you know, freedoms to all the users. We really look to the organizations to decide if it makes sense.
Thanks, Don.
And I will be honest, I see this for smaller organizations not having a collaborative mechanism, that I think this is a great getting started point. For larger organizations, yeah, it's obviously bigger organizations, more complex, right? So we can sit and work with you guys to kind of make sure that we dial it in right the way you want it.
I think we like that, you know, because we don't have a ORD managed workspace right now in ProjectWise. We're still testing the non-managed part, and we like to have that option and that flexibility, but still share the files between teams and units.
Oh, absolutely. I completely agree, and I know you guys are on a maturity model here that looks it's going to be you're going to be leading the way here, I think, on this new workspace if things hold up the way they are, right?
Yeah, that's what we're hoping for, but guess we will need a lot of help from you guys and our power engineering firm's input in creating the what we call an aggregate workspace.
And I do want to point out, just so everyone's aware too, this connected projects concept exists across all of the products, right? So here I opened up Bentley View. If you're not a user of Bentley View, I encourage you because it's free. And if you're like me, 9 times out of 10, I just want to look at a file. I don't really need to do any editing. So I really enjoy using it. And I want to point out that, look, I have all the same configurations even for there. So if I go to this example, I don't have a work set. Oh, I know why, because I didn't path this one. But I can actually take advantage of doing the exact same thing. So if I have something that's out there, and you know, here's a training example. I just want to point out off to the side that I'll have access to those properties as well. That's all. So even in a viewing environment, I could be a viewer just looking at DGN files that are in that connected project. But with that, I want to pause and let Patty take over, because I think you wanted to give out a prize. Is that right? And I know I've run you to the hilt.
I appreciate it, Don Lee, and I hope everyone was able to pick up a little something that they can use and actually be, you know, start using today. If you have any questions, you can just email them to events@nclug.com, and we can do that. And I just want to remind you, we were offering PDH credits for this, 1 PDH credit for the attendees. And I think we can capture everybody that attended through this webinar, unless you dialed in the number. So if you dialed in the number, I need you to send me your name, the phone number, and to the events at NCLUG, just so we can match that up, the phone numbers with the person. So we're planning on doing this weekly. These are our NCLUG Tech Talks. So we've got one planned for next week on July 15th on moving to ORD, where to start. You should have gotten an email invite for that already. I think a lot of you have seen a lot of you joining already. So we're going to try to host these every week. So if you have a topic that you want us to cover, please, again, send us an email to that events@nclug.com, and we'll try to get it on the books. We've got some others planned coming up, so you'll be getting emails about that. So be sure to tell others too, your coworkers and friends and stuff, to become members of NCLUG. It's free to join, and that way they can get the invites too, and just kind of help us spread the word. So now, thanks everybody for joining us. I did say that we would do a random drawing for a name to give away a $50 Amazon gift card, and I've selected that, and it's Virginia, and I'll probably butcher your last name, Scar, SCHAAR. So congratulations. I'll be emailing you that $50 gift card. Thanks for joining us today. We did record the session, so hopefully we could post it on our website. So it might take us a little while to do that, but just you can keep an eye out for that. And with that, I appreciate, Don, your time. Don, were you able to cover everything you had, or did you have more stuff to cover?
No, we were basically at the end of the story arc here. I will say that you know, that usually I just finished with that very first thing I started with, and it's that on Bentley.com is where we advertise all of that information to kind of get you kick-started. It's right on the main page, as you can see, right here and here. And I appreciate everybody, you know, attending. I appreciate the invite. I thank you very much. And, you know, please feel free if you guys have questions. I mean, NCLUG is a great resource for y'all. You guys are a tight network. If you have questions for me on some of this technology, and it even goes even beyond if it's open road stuff or other Bentley things, we can find you the right person. You can email me at don.lee@bentley.com. We're more than happy to help you all, and you know, be safe. Yeah.
Thanks, Don. I appreciate your time. And thanks everybody for joining us. Feel free to send any comments or anything you have to us too. We're always interested in trying to improve ourselves. So appreciate it, and y'all have a good rest of your day.
Have a great day, everyone. Bye now.